I thought I was just buying a quiet home. Turns out I was stepping into a war zone. I'm not the kind of guy who looks for conflict. I'm Marcus Williams, a software developer who works from home, keeps his lawn neat, minds his business, and doesn't bother anyone. I don't throw parties. I don't blast music. I don't have loud pets or unapproved paint colors. I just wanted a little peace and quiet. But in Oak Ridge Estates, peace only exists if you play by the rules. And Patricia Henderson made sure those rules were hers. Patricia, the woman with the angular blonde bob, the sparkling white Lexus, and a vanity plate that read Pat Time. She introduced herself with a sugary smile. Then started policing succulents on my porch. I'm thumping HOA notices in my mailbox like she was handing out candy on Halloween. I tried to be civil. But then, one rainy afternoon, she parked inside my garage without permission, used the keypad code I gave her once for a quick wiring inspection, and treated my house like public parking. That's when I realized this wasn't about rules. It was about control. And if I didn't push back now, I'd be giving up more than just a parking spot. In this video, I'll walk you through how a petty HOA war escalated from trash bins to garage invasions, the exact steps I took to legally defend my home and expose a board member abusing her power, and the moment her own lies turned against her in front of the entire community. If you've ever had a neighbor who crossed the line, if you've ever told yourself, it's just a small thing, I'll let it go, don't. Because this story started with a succulent and ended with a full-blown HOA coup. Let me show you how it all began. I never thought I'd be the kind of person caught in a full-blown HOA feud. I'm not confrontational, I'm not loud. I'm just a guy who wants to be left alone to write code, water his succulents, and drink his coffee in peace. When I bought my house in Oak Ridge Estates 3 years ago, it felt like a quiet victory. A 2-bedroom home on a corner lot, trees lining the sidewalk, neighbors who waved but didn't overshare. The kind of suburb where nothing dramatic ever happened. At least, not until she moved in. But we'll get to her. Back then, my days had a peaceful rhythm. Wake up early, brew dark roasts, check client emails, slide into my home office, converted from the old garage by the previous owner, sunlight pouring in through the oversized windows. Everything about this setup worked for me. One car in the garage, another under the carport in the back. Clean, efficient, nothing fancy. The HOA had been quiet too. Sure, they sent out the occasional newsletter about lawn edging or water usage, but it was harmless. No one showed up at your door, no one tried to regulate your soul. It was peaceful. And when you've lived through enough noise in life, noise at work, in family, in cities, you learn to treasure the quiet. But here's the thing about peace. It's fragile. You don't notice it slipping away, not at first. Not when someone questions your bird feeder. Not when a note appears about your mailbox color. Not even when you get a passive-aggressive comment about a delivery box sitting out too long. No, it's a slow erosion. Until one day you look up and realize the person next door isn't just watching you, they're tracking you. That day came for me. The moment I heard the blaring car horn. That Lexus in my carport. That woman in my space. And that was the beginning of the end. Because the moment Patricia Henderson moved in, the rules of the neighborhood didn't just change, they became weapons. You always know the moment things start to shift. For me, it was the day a spotless white Lexus SUV rolled into the driveway next door, license plate gleaming with bold black letters, Pat Time. Patricia Henderson had arrived. Blonde bob, impeccable beige blazer, and a voice that somehow managed to sound both syrupy and condescending at the same time. "Hi, I'm Patricia, but please call me Pat. We're all neighbors here." She said it with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. At first I thought nothing of it, just another type A suburbanite with a Pinterest-perfect welcome mat and a tight leash on her dog. We all know the type. But within weeks of moving in, she was at every community meeting, taking notes, asking questions, volunteering for small projects. And then, like it was always meant to be, she was elected to the HOA board. I didn't even remember voting. No one really did. That's the thing about people like Patricia. They don't wait for power to be handed to them. They install themselves. Her first official move? Enforcing previously overlooked violations. And by that I mean targeting anything that didn't meet her personal standard of perfection. Like my succulents. 3 small potted succulents on my porch. Harmless, decorative, low maintenance. But apparently not HOA-approved vegetation. I moved them to the backyard without complaint. Didn't want to stir the pot. Then came the garbage bin warning. Apparently leaving them at the curb for 30 minutes too long was enough to earn a written notice taped to my door. Still I complied, because I assumed reason would eventually prevail. But Patricia didn't want compliance. She wanted control. "Marcus, honey," she'd say with that faux concern, "it's not personal. We all have to follow the rules. It's what keeps the neighborhood beautiful." But it was personal. Because I was the only one getting notices. And the only one she came to face, like a queen inspecting her least favorite peasant. I learned something then. There's a difference between keeping order and enforcing obedience. Patricia wasn't keeping peace. She was building a power structure. And it was only a matter of time before she crossed the line completely. Because once someone like Patricia gets a taste of power, it's not about what's fair. It's about what she can get away with. At first I thought it was just Patricia being Patricia. Obsessed with lawn edges, mailbox standards, and the exact shade of beige allowed for porch chairs. Annoying? Absolutely. Unreasonable? Probably. But I told myself, she's just doing her job. Let it go. Big mistake. Because people like Patricia, they don't interpret silence as peace. They see it as permission. The complaints started stacking up like clockwork. One week it was the unauthorized bird feeder in my backyard. Apparently it was attracting undesirable wildlife. The next, she left a typed letter in my mailbox about delivery packages sitting on my porch too long. "It affects neighborhood presentation," she wrote. "Please retrieve promptly." It wasn't a suggestion, it was a command. And every time I adjusted, every time I complied, she pushed further. Because for Patricia this was never about rules. It was about dominance. Let's see how far I can go before he pushes back. The final straw came one rainy Tuesday. I was on a Zoom call with clients when I heard the horn blaring outside. At first I ignored it, but it wouldn't stop. When I finally stepped out, umbrella in hand, I saw Patricia sitting in her Lexus parked under my carport. She rolled down her window an inch. "Your carport was empty," she said, tone sharp, "and the streets flooded near my driveway. I assumed you wouldn't mind." She assumed. No knock, no call, no permission. And when I told her to move, she didn't apologize. She threatened to bring it up with the board. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about HOA compliance. It was retaliation, calculated, deliberate, relentless. And it was only getting worse. People like Patricia wrap control in rules. But when those rules no longer work, they reach for justification and call it community safety or emergency protocol. And if you don't draw a line, they'll just keep crossing it. So I drew mine. Firmly. But what she did next, it wasn't just a violation. It was an invasion. Because the day she broke into my garage, she didn't just cross the line, she erased it. I was in the middle of presenting to a client when I heard it. Beep beep. Not once, not twice. Just constant. 5 minutes straight, one long aggressive honk that sliced through my call like a knife. I muted my mic, stood up, and felt the blood rushing to my ears. Stepping outside, umbrella in hand, I saw Patricia in her Lexus comfortably parked in my carport, one hand on the horn, the other holding her phone. She didn't look flustered, she didn't look sorry. She looked annoyed. "Marcus, you need to move your car," she shouted through the barely rolled down window. "I've been sitting here getting wet." I blinked. "That's my carport, Patricia. The street's flooded. I didn't want water damage. Your carport was empty, so I assumed you wouldn't mind." There it was again, that word. Assumed. My garage door had been shut. My car had been inside. I had just brought in groceries before the rain started. The carport wasn't empty. It was just temporarily unoccupied. That didn't make it public property. "I'm in a work meeting," I said, "and this is my private space. You can't just park here." Her face tightened. "Well, I'm asking now, just move your car so I can pull into the garage instead. The carport isn't enough cover." I just stood there. Soaked shoes, dripping umbrella, staring at her like I'd just watched someone walk into my living room and put their feet on the coffee table. "No," I said finally. "I'm not moving my car, and I need you to leave." She glared at me for a full 30 seconds before reversing, with just enough force to splash a wave of muddy water onto my shoes. That evening I got an email. Subject line: Proposed Amendment. Emergency Vehicle Accommodations. It was a motion backed by Patricia to force residents with extra parking to make them available to neighbors during inclement weather. My carport, my garage, my house. She was rewriting the rules to justify her entitlement. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about boundaries anymore. It was about ownership, and Patricia thought she owned everything she could touch. Because the next time she came back, she didn't ask, she used my garage code and let herself in. It started with a grocery run. Just a quick trip to pick up eggs, coffee, and a few things for the weekend. I was gone for maybe 40 minutes. When I pulled into my driveway, I noticed something immediately. The garage door was open, wide open, and inside, sitting like she owned the place, was Patricia's white Lexus. I parked at the curb, heart pounding, trying to process what I was looking at. She wasn't in the car. She wasn't anywhere. I walked into my garage slowly, unsure if I was dreaming. Then I saw it. A note, taped to the interior door like it was a friendly favor. Marcus. Had to attend an emergency board meeting. My driveway is being resealed today and I couldn't park on the street due to maple construction. Used your garage since you were out. Thanks for understanding. Pat. I stood there, staring at her handwriting. She'd used the keypad code. The code I gave her months ago, during an inspection. One-time access to look at wiring near the exterior wall. That code was never meant for her to use again, especially not to turn my private garage into her personal parking spot. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was calculated, casual, violating. I closed the garage door, went inside. Changed the code. Then I disabled the manual override button inside the house. No more chances, no more assuming. Finally, I texted her. "Patricia, you've parked in my garage without permission. The code has been changed. Please contact me directly when you return so we can discuss this serious breach of privacy." She didn't reply. Not for hours. Then, "Marcus, I need to get my car. Please open the garage." I let her wait. 15 minutes. Then another 30. By the time I opened the door, she was pacing like a politician who just lost an election. "You're holding my vehicle hostage," she snapped. "No," I said calmly. "I'm securing my property after someone broke in." That was the moment the tone shifted, from passive-aggressive to downright furious. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "We're neighbors." "Exactly," I said, "and neighbors ask. They don't assume." Because when she realized she couldn't control me, she tried to ruin me, one bogus violation at a time. I thought the garage incident would be the last straw. That maybe Patricia would finally realize she'd crossed the line. I was wrong. The next morning, taped to my front door like a warrant, was a fresh HOA notice. "Your home office conversion is not in compliance with current HOA codes. Please restore to original garage configuration within 30 days. I nearly laughed. That garage, the one she'd just illegally parked in, had been permitted and approved by the county and the HOA years ago. It was in every closing document. I had the blueprints, I had the permit numbers. Hell, I had the photos from the realtor's listing. It was transparent, petty, vindictive. I called my lawyer. She confirmed exactly what I suspected. They had no legal standing to enforce this. The rule Patricia was referencing hadn't even existed when the conversion was done. We drafted a firm response, cited local zoning laws, attached all relevant permits and documentation. We didn't just say no. We made it clear. Bush again and its harassment. But it didn't stop there. I started finding notices every few days. Trash bins visible from the street. Lawn grass 1/4 inch too long. Exterior light bulb too bright for neighborhood standards. All of them minor, all of them absurd. All of them from Patricia. She was trying to bury me in bureaucracy. If she couldn't control me with guilt or HOA gossip, she'd try to drown me in paperwork. And that's when I shifted. I stopped reacting. And I started documenting. I installed a new security system with cloud backups. Saved every notice. Screenshotted every text. Logged dates, times, and interactions in a shared Google Doc with my lawyer. Because if this was going to court or the press, I'd be ready. And here's the truth people forget about HOA bullies. They thrive in the shadows. But they wilt in the light. Still, even I wasn't prepared for what came next. Because just when I thought she'd run out of angles, Patricia came back. And this time she brought an audience. Because nothing gets a control freak more desperate than being exposed in front of everyone she once commanded. When the garage door opened that morning, I wasn't surprised to see Patricia. I was surprised to see she'd brought backup. 2 other board members stood beside her, Howard, the soft-spoken retiree with kind eyes, and Diane, a newer resident who always smiled but rarely spoke. Patricia, on the other hand, looked like she was marching into court. Jaw set, eyes blazing, clipboard in hand like a sword of HOA justice. "We're here to retrieve my vehicle," she said coolly, "and ensure there are no further misunderstandings." I gestured politely toward the now unlocked garage. "Be my guest. I've already opened it." Her Lexus sat there like an uninvited guest who'd overstayed its welcome. Howard stepped forward. "Marcus, Patricia mentioned there's been some tension. We thought perhaps a civil conversation?" "Happy to talk," I cut in, "but let's start with the facts." I handed each of them a copy of the timeline I'd prepared. Every incident, every unauthorized entry, photos, screenshots, HOA violation, even a copy of the local code stating what Patricia had done was trespassing twice. Diane's smile faded. Howard looked uncomfortable. "Patricia?" She turned a shade of red I'd only ever seen on warning labels. "He's twisting everything," she snapped. "I left a note the first time. I assumed—" "Assumption isn't permission," I said calmly. "And there wasn't a note the second time, just entitlement." She opened her mouth to argue again. But Howard held up a hand. "Patricia, did he ever give you explicit permission to use his garage?" Her silence said everything. Diane stepped forward, eyes wide. "You told the board he agreed, that he locked your car inside maliciously." "I secured my property," I replied, "against repeated trespass." There it was. The moment the power shifted. Patricia marched to her car, threw open the door, and backed out without a word. She didn't thank me, didn't look back. But as she turned onto the street, her tire nearly clipped Diana's foot. That was the moment the HOA started asking questions. Not about me, about her. Because when bullies lose control, they don't retreat, they escalate. And the next stunt she pulled? It involved police and a tow truck. I honestly thought that was it. That after being exposed in front of her precious board, Patricia would back off. Maybe even stay in her lane, literally. But narcissists don't retreat. They retaliate. That afternoon I came back from a short grocery run. And there it was. Her Lexus, not in my garage this time, blocking my driveway. Parked horizontally, engine off, no note. No mistake. She wasn't hiding anymore. She was daring me. I didn't engage. I took photos from every angle, tamped, geotagged. Then I called the non-emergency police line and a tow company. 20 minutes later, Officer Jenkins arrived. He was calm, professional, and very interested in the stack of documentation I had printed and ready. Photos, complaint history, security footage of unauthorized access, even her HOA violation emails. "So you've already warned her multiple times?" he asked. "Documented. Repeatedly. She's now escalated to blocking my ability to access my own property." He nodded and walked next door. I watched through the security cam feed as she opened the door, hands flying, voice raised. Whatever story she was spinning, it wasn't landing. 10 minutes later, the officer came back. "She claims there was a miscommunication about parking arrangements," he said, clearly unimpressed. "But I've advised her to move the vehicle immediately. If not, you're within your rights to have it towed." 5 minutes after that, she came out in a rage. She didn't speak. She didn't look at me. She just glared through her sunglasses, stomped to her car, and peeled out of the driveway like she was trying to make the asphalt feel her anger. The next morning, I received a certified letter from the HOA. Emergency board meeting. Agenda: parking violations and property use restrictions. Guess whose signature was at the bottom? Patricia's. I could have laughed. She wanted a war? She was about to get one she couldn't control. And this time I wouldn't be showing up alone. Because when you bring lies to a board meeting, and someone else brings proof, witnesses, and a lawyer, you don't just lose the argument. You lose the power. The meeting was set for 6:30 p.m. in the community clubhouse. I arrived early, wearing my calmest expression and carrying a neatly organized folder. Patricia was already there. She stood near the coffee table like it was a courtroom podium, clipboard in hand, surrounded by a few loyal faces whispering encouragement. But when she saw me walk in, with my lawyer, her smile didn't just falter, it evaporated. "This isn't a legal proceeding," she said, loud enough for others to hear. "Then you have nothing to worry about," I replied, handing the agenda to my attorney with a nod. The meeting opened with the usual pleasantries. Then Patricia launched into her monologue about community cooperation, parking confusion, and the threat of individuals who refuse to participate in shared responsibility. She never mentioned my name. She didn't have to. That was my cue. I stood up, turned to the board, and calmly passed out a printed packet to each member. Inside, photos of her car in my garage, screenshots of our text messages, a timeline of harassment, detailed HOA rule citations, county permit approvals for my home office conversion, a notarized statement from my lawyer confirming the legal violations. I didn't raise my voice, and I didn't accuse. I just presented. "I'm here not to escalate," I said. "I'm here to protect my right to live in peace without being targeted by someone abusing their position." Then something happened I didn't expect. One by one, residents raised their hands. A woman near the back shared how Patricia cited her for a garden gnome, then let another house display holiday inflatables for 2 months. A man next to her talked about his son getting yelled at for skateboarding too close to Patricia's sidewalk. The room shifted. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about her. By the time the meeting adjourned, it was clear. Patricia had lost the room. 2 weeks later, she was voted off the board. Howard took over as president. And 3 weeks after that, a "for sale" sign went up in her yard. Because some neighbors try to rule with fear. But the ones who last? They lead with respect and leave with dignity. The day Patricia moved out was strangely quiet. No final speech. No HOA newsletter farewell. Just the screech of packing tape, a moving truck idling at the curb, and the faint sound of a car door slamming shut. She didn't say goodbye. But as she pulled away, Lexus spotless, license plate still proudly flashing "Pat time," we locked eyes from across the street. I raised a hand, a simple wave. She gave a tight nod. And just like that, she was gone. For a while, the neighborhood felt like it was catching its breath. People who once stayed silent now smiled longer, waved wider, even knocked on my door with cookies or quiet apologies. Some were sincere, some were just trying to reset the scoreboard. But the HOA changed too. Under Howard's leadership, we focused on real issues: improving lighting near the park, addressing a drainage problem at the end of Maple, revising outdated bylaws. The monthly meetings became discussions, not declarations. And me? I kept my security cameras. I still lock the garage. But I also reclaimed something bigger than my driveway: my peace. That's what power does when it's used properly. It protects. It doesn't patrol. Looking back, I used to wonder how it even got to that point, how something as simple as a parking spot could ignite a neighborhood war. But it was never about the space. It was about control, about entitlement masked as community concern, about someone who thought rules only existed to serve her comfort. And the thing is, Patricia didn't just move out of the neighborhood. She moved out of a system that refused to keep enabling her. And that's what matters. Real power isn't the ability to write a violation letter. It's the choice to respect boundaries, even when no one's watching. So if you're watching this and thinking, this would never happen to me, just know, it starts with a favor, then a note, then a Lexus in your garage. If you've ever felt small in your own home, if you've ever been told to just let it go, let this story be your reminder. You don't need to raise your voice to take back your space. You just need to stand your ground with proof, patience, and purpose. And sometimes, that's enough to change the neighborhood.